Hey guys, how's it going? I am Hugo, or the ShapeH31 Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and welcome back to another video. And this is a video that's kind of out of place, time-wise, but it's a video that I've been wanting to make for a while now. All the way since the very beginning, I have been a fan of Pokemon, from Red and Blue to where we are now with Sun and Moon. And with Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon scheduled for release later on in November this year, I want to make this video where I would rank the Generations of Pokémon from my least favorite down to my favorite, and I actually took a whole month away from making videos on YouTube so I can make this video. Because while I have been with Pokemon since the beginning, I stopped playing Pokemon games after Generation 3 because I didn't upgrade from the Game Boy Advance to Nintendo DS, and I didn't get a 3DS until January this year. And since then, I've gone back, I bought a copy of Pokemon Moon, I bought a copy of Pokemon X, I bought a Jurassic Emulator app to play Pokemon games from Generations 4 and 5, and now I'm completely caught up with all the games I have missed, and I've gone back and played the older ones. So I can now make this video. And also, disclaimer that I will not be including remakes in this list. So Pokemon Fire Red, Leaf Green, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire will have no bearings on this list for any of their generation or remake generation. Well, it's because I've actually yet to play Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but I hope to do so soon, and I want to save that kind of video where I rank the remakes for just before Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon's release. So, without further delay, let's do this. What I do best. Starting off the list with number 7.
You suck!
The generation where it all began, and a source of nostalgia for a good chunk of the fanbase and a sanctum of the most annoying part of the fanbase, the Gen 1ers. A common motto I have on my channel is, nostalgia is a powerful drug, but it's not a drug I overdose on. Nostalgia can only take you so far, but when nostalgia is the best thing that you got going for you, then you won't get far at all. And with Generation 1 Pokemon, it really shows. Generation 1 has a crap ton of problems, and the form of glitches, which I'm honestly not a fan of, including the infamous Missing No glitch, balancing issues with psychic types being extremely broken, abusing the absolutely busted special stat, which is special attack and defense combined to one single stat. In addition to them having no weaknesses whatsoever, technically, psychic type Pokemon back then were weak to ghosts and bugs, like how they are today. However, we only had one line of ghost type Pokemon who were all partially poisoned, giving them a weakness to psychic types. On top of having really no ghost type moves available, we had Lick and Nightshade, but those aren't really reliable moves in battle. Bug type Pokemon, however, had pretty much no offensive presence whatsoever, and we only had 2 bug type moves available back then, but those 2 bug type moves could only be learned by one Pokemon each. Which, aside from being the only counter to the psychic type, which giving them no counter essentially, that in itself is a huge problem. A huge number of things in the game don't really work the way they're supposed to work, such as secondary effects of status ailments lasting even after the condition has been cured, like sleep taking an entire turn to wear off, meaning if your opponent was faster, they could immediately put you right back to sleep, which got frustrating really fast. Critical hits were determined based on the speed of a Pokemon, meaning the faster a Pokemon is, the more chances they'll get a critical hit. Moves like Bind and Wrap completely immobilize you, preventing you from attacking. Your stats will roll over if they got too high, and that's only scratching the surface of the problems that Generation had. There is literally a huge list of Generation 1's problems, but I won't go over them because that would take way too much time. Overall, Generation 1 may have been a generation that kickstarted this legendary series, but that's about it. Generation 1 may be where it all began, but for me, it doesn't hold up well, and it's pretty much just one huge, jumbled, archaic mess. I know a lot of people grew up with these games. I did too. I'm sure Red and Blue were fantastic back in the day. I have fond memories of playing the Pokemon Blue game that my mom, or my sister, borrowed from my cousin, and even taking it to school with me and getting in trouble for it. Was it worth it? Yeah, it was, and I would do it again if I had the chance to go back in time. But looking at these games now, they're just borderline unplayable by today's standards, or even on their own, they're still unplayable. I didn't have much fun playing Pokemon Red, and Pokemon Yellow has a special charm to it that makes it slightly more bearable than Red and Blue, but not much better. And while I'm being honest, I really wasn't even planning on playing Generation 1 before I made this video, Initially, I only planned on playing Pokemon Generations 4 through 7, because I only grew up with Generations 1 through 3 and stopped playing after that. But when deciding to play all Generations, I was dreading playing Generation 1 because I already knew how unpolished these games were, and it was a complete chore to play through both Red and Yellow. But thankfully, Pokemon improved with Generation 2 onwards, so really, it only gets better from here on out. Oh boy, thank you. A breath of fresh air on this list with a fan favorite Generation 4. Generation 4 introduced many new features that would revolutionize the way Pokemon is today. However, with those changes, it doesn't say Generation 4 for why it's so low on this list, and that being because these games are slower than a Eurasian woodcock. While playing Pokemon Diamond, there were many times where I honestly just got bored playing it because it was just so slow I wanted to speed through the game. And at one point, I even considered just quitting the game altogether, just moving on straight to Platinum, which I heard from the fan base is supposed to be really good. On top of that, Diamond and Pearl only have specific Pokemon of certain types, meaning your choices for building a team were very limited. On top of that, you couldn't even get all the Sinnoh native Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl without a cartridge from an older Pokemon game that was played on the Game Boy Advance. This was rectified in Pokemon Platinum, which I will say is improvement over Diamond and Pearl, but I don't think it's drastic improvement. I like the addition to the story that Platinum made, and I do think it definitely made things more fun and more interesting, but I don't think Platinum is as great as so many people make it out to be. Generation 4 does get some merit by bringing what's probably the biggest change to the core games, that being the physical special split, which gave a metric ton of Pokemon more viability, since some Pokemon stats are more attributed toward a specific kind of offense and defense with their move pool. Meaning the physical special split made one's options for battles borderline unlimited and brought a major upgrade to the competitive scene of battling. Another problem I have is the Sinnoh region. Honestly, Sinnoh is my second least favorite region of the core series. I like the idea of the region. Sinnoh is more mountainous than the other regions, and some places do have a greater sense of environment, and places in the game that I really do like, but the Sinnoh region just overall for me felt empty and was just a complete chore to trek through, especially with how slow the game is, and the fact that Sinnoh is very HM reliant. I feel like the franchise hit an all-time high with relying on HMs to get where you need to go, in places where you want to go. I don't like wasting a move slot for an HM I know I'm going to get rid of later, as well as wasting a free slot on my team for an HM slave. I don't like cheating in Pokemon games. I try to keep it to a minimum, but I felt like I had to walk the walls to avoid the mass use of HMs that Sinnoh requires me to use. Overall, Generation 4 isn't bad. They most certainly can be fun games, but these are, in my opinion, the most disappointing Pokemon games I've played. I stopped playing Pokemon after Generation 3, I didn't start playing until January this year with Generation 7, and I was excited for Platinum. I was excited to play the Sinnoh region, but these games didn't live up to my expectations. While Generations 5 through 7 either fulfilled them or surpassed them. Overall, Generation 4 isn't bad, but it is disappointing. Oh my. Well, hello there, childhood. It's been a while. How have you been? And the years have been really good to you. A lot better than Generation 1, that's for true. However, just because you're my childhood, don't think I won't pull any punches on you. Coming in 5th place would be Generation 2. Generation 2 was a much needed breath of fresh air into the Pokemon series. Even now, from the final days of the Game Boy Color to the 3DS and soon to be Nintendo Switch, I feel like Generation 2 still holds up really well today, offering a lot of fun, mechanics still being used today, and some of the most content from any Pokemon game ever, and in general just cleaning up that mess that Generation 1 left behind. Starting by fixing those balancing issues and depowering the psychic types by splitting special attack and defense into separate stats, as well as the introduction of 2 new types, Steel and Dark, who both resist the psychic type's power and give fighting chances more of an advantage in battle. pretty much nullifying all the bouncing issues that Generation 1 had. Oh, thank goodness. On top of that, Generation 2 introduced the day and night system, which allowed different methods of evolving your Pokemon, as well as being able to catch different Pokemon at certain times during the day, time-based events, catching Pokemon on certain days of the week, our first female playable character, breeding, baby Pokemon, Pokerush for EV training, and so much more. Generation 2 probably has the best idea for post-game content to date, with being able to travel between Johto and Kanto as much as you want and battle their gym leaders. And while I may not be a fan of Kanto, it truly is amazing to have 2 whole regions to explore in one game, even if one region is watered down a bit. However, I feel like that in itself is a problem. While it is cool to traverse 2 regions in one game, the Pokemon and trainers in Kanto are all severely underleveled and don't get much better, and you're going to pretty much be spending most of your time grinding to get your team ready to beat Red at Mount Silver. And if you aren't prepared for that battle, then this guy, who boasts one of the highest level teams in the entire franchise, would absolutely f*** you up. Even if you finish the Gym Leaders of Kanto with the team you've been using beforehand throughout the entire game, he was an absolute nightmare to deal with. Plus, on top of that, I feel like Generation 2 needs the Kanto region in order for Johto to be complemented completely, because Johto on its own really doesn't stand out. It's a beautiful region, but really I feel like it needs Kanto to really be complemented and stand out from other regions. Overall, I love Generation 2 Pokemon. Pokemon Crystal was the first Pokemon game I ever owned, so while I do have a lot of nostalgic memories for it, I feel like it still holds up well today even without nostalgia. Generation 2 for me feels like what Generation 1 could have been if it had more polish applied to it. But thanks to the improvements that Generation 2 made to the franchise, or Generation 1 at the time, Gold, Silver, and Crystal are the definitive Pokemon games of the Game Boy Color. Well, childhood, your stint with Pokemon ends here. In the middle of the pack, we have Generation 3. Sort of like a reset to the franchise, with Generation 3 coming along giving the series a new makeover with cleaner graphics, nicer designs, and animation. Generation 3 built on the improvements that Generation 2 brought and gave its own revolutionary-worthy changes, such as adding natures, abilities, secret bases, and devil battles. Starting with devil battles is exactly what it says on the tin, being able to battle with 2 Pokemon at the same time. Secret bases aren't per se important, but you have to admit, it is pretty cool to make your own secret clubhouse anywhere you want in the region. The true importance of Generation 3's innovation will be both natures and abilities. Natures provide a 10% increase in a specific stat and decrease another stat of 10% as well. While that may not seem like a big deal, it is. If you're a casual player, then you don't have to worry about something like this. But if you're a competitive player or you want to play competitively online, you should know that that increase in the right stat will make all the difference in an online battle. Abilities will give the advantage depending on the Pokemon in question on what ability they have. Intimidate lowers the opponent's attacking power. Keen Eye, you'll never lose accuracy and all of your moves will pretty much never miss. Tough Claws, any move that makes physical contact with the opponent will get a nice big boost in power. Protein, change your type to whatever move you're attacking with, meaning you will always have a stab. Blaze, low on health, fire type moves essentially become twice as strong as they normally are. Each ability can make or break your Pokemon depending on what it is, so hope you get the desired Pokemon and get a good one that will turn the tide of the battle in your favor. The region of Hoenn itself is a beautiful one that in my opinion has the greatest sense of environment of any region so far to date, with weather ranging from sandstorm in the desert, volcanoes, tropical rainforest, fields of snowy volcanic ash, that really make Hoenn probably my second favorite region to date. But as wonderful as Hoenn is, there are a couple of problems I have with it. One of which, like with Sinnoh, I feel like Hoenn is very HM reliant to get anywhere or to do anything, but not to the same extent as Sinnoh was. Second problem being that Hoenn has way too much f***ing water. Why does Hoenn have so much f***ing water? Why are there so many Tentacle, Pelipper, and Whelmer? Why? But yeah, Hoenn has way too much water. Well, it's good for training grass and electric types, but that's about it. Aside from those two things, Hoenn is a great region. It has a very nice roster of Pokemon that's one of my favorites. With 134 new Pokemon, there's certainly a lot of variety. And a common complaint is that Hoenn pretty much forces you to use Hoenn native Pokemon, which I don't mind. I'd honestly rather make a team of newer Pokemon than older ones. Or at least have most of my team be newer Pokemon. But Generation 3 is a delight and blast to play through. It was back in the day, and it still is now. It's a real shame this is the only generation of Pokemon that was released on the Game Boy Advance. Ruby and Sapphire hold special places in my heart, providing some of the most fun I've ever had with Pokemon, and Emerald was even better with more improvements to the story, making it a definitive Pokemon game of Generation 3. And now on to the actual number 3, which in my opinion is equally as good or slightly better than Generation 3. Number 3, the recently concluded Generation 6, and one that's a black sheep amongst the fanbase. While I do see it get a lot of praise, it seems to get more negativity than positivity nowadays, but I'm clearly not one of those people. Generation 6, much like Generation 3, gave the franchise a makeover, completely turning the core games into 3D games, and the 3D animation and graphics are absolutely beautiful, really bringing the college region to life, becoming my favorite region thanks to the beautifully designed locations like Reflection Cave, Parfum Palace, Lumio City, Coryway Town, the Tower of Mastery, and Terminus K to name a few places. On top of that, the college region isn't that HM reliant, so that's a huge plus. Aside from the 3D, X and Y brought new things to the table, such as Wonder Trading, Super Trading, Pokemon AME, and Mega Evolution to name a few. The real kicker of which is Mega Evolution, which are form changes for specific Pokemon, giving them a ridiculously good ability, adding 100 to their base stats, and making Pokemon who are previously useless in competitive battles much more viable, Pokemon who are completely useless, completely broken, and Pokemon who are completely broken becoming straight up busted. Game Freak, what the f*** were you thinking when you made this thing? Anything goes is what describes this behemoth to a T. Entering a new type with the Fairy type, which counters the ridiculous power the Dragon types had, which I didn't see a problem because Dragon type Pokemon are obviously the best type there is, as well as giving an edge to the Steel and Poison type of Pokemon. Then we have a few problems of Generation 6, one of which being the story. While I honestly don't think it's bad, I do feel like it was a little underwhelming, since it had so much potential to be better than what it actually was, but I overall still did enjoy it. The villain's team, Team Flare, isn't the best, but I do understand the main villain Lysander's intentions and motivations. I do myself agree that humans are destructive, and I can see overpopulation becoming a problem in the future. The roster of Pokemon this time around is very minuscule, being the smallest roster of Pokemon we've had to date, with only 72 new Pokemon being introduced. But beforehand, Generation 2 had the smallest roster of Pokemon, introducing 100 new Pokemon to the franchise. Thus, the Pokedex of Generation 6 becomes a double-edged sword. While it is cool that the College Pokedex has 450 Pokemon, giving you a lot of versatility to choose from with the largest national Pokedex of any generation to date, it hurts that slightly more than 15% of that Pokedex consists of Pokemon that are new to the franchise, meaning that newer Pokemon will pretty much be overshadowed by older ones. And for people who like me, who like to make teams consisting of mostly new Pokemon, that's a pretty big problem. But despite that, I was still able to make teams of Pokemon consisting mostly of college native Pokemon in every one of my playthroughs. Overall, I don't think Generation 6 is nearly as bad as so many people make it out to be. I agree, it's not the best, and it does have problems, but then again, what generation is flawless? Not even my favorite generation is flawless. I will say it's disappointing, with the Generation story being really underwhelming, but I still think it was better than any story from generations that preceded it, well, most of them. I don't think it is quite as easy as some people say it is. Even without the experience share and the handicap I give myself, I struggled more with Pokemon X and Y than I did in most other Pokemon games. Regardless, the final product was still overall really good. Some addicting mini-games, a beautifully designed region, and while it may feel a little unpolished, it's still amazing for what it is. The message of Generation 6 was the most clear to me. Pokemon has always been about bonds and making friends, and I felt like Generation 6 did that better than any other series. With a set of friends who may not be the best of characters, really do give you the vibe of being true companions from start to finish. But while I am disappointed that the X and Y games didn't become my favorite set of Pokemon games like how the X and Y anime is my favorite Pokemon anime, I still believe the games met my expectations, so kudos to you, Game Freak. Good job.
Victory is right within our sight, bathing us in silvery moonlight. Let's charge our energy. Come on and join me, shout just as loud as can be. I'm alright.
Recently released Generation 7 of Pokemon, and one that immediately hit it off with the fanbase who've already deemed them the greatest Pokemon games of all time. While I don't agree with that, I definitely think Game Freak outdid themselves and hit a home run with Sun and Moon. These games provide some of the most fun and challenging Pokemon games to date, on top of being more story-driven, which I very much enjoyed, giving wonderful characters, tons of new things to the series like Hyper Training for maxing out your IVs, the QR scanner for catching event Pokemon and Pokemon you normally can't find in the wild, Z moves, Alolan forms, and the Pokeride, which are pretty much free Pokemon to do whatever you need them to do, meaning we no longer need HMs. Thank you! Generation 7 gives one of the most interesting stories from the Pokemon games to date, and shakes up the formula by taking away gym battles and replacing them with the Island Challenge, which was way more fun than I actually thought it would be. While I wouldn't mind gyms returning in future installments of the core series, I'd be fine if we kept doing something like the Island Challenge in future generations. However, Generation 7 isn't without flaws. One of which being that I am not a fan of the crime organization of Generation 7, Team Skull. While they may be popular amongst the fanbase, I really don't like them. Whenever I play a Pokemon game, I want the villainous team of that generation to be threatening. They give a sense of urgency like, you have to stop them. But Team Skull doesn't even come remotely close to giving me that feeling. Team Skull are a shadow of a doubt the goofiest crime organization we've had in the core series that no one takes seriously. Professor Kukui outright tells their leader Guzman to his face that no one in Alola's afraid of them, and think of them more as a nuisance than anything else. Team Rocket may be a bland crime organization, but they're at least more threatening and have more of a purpose to do what they do than Team Skull. I found the Aether Foundation to be more threatening than Team Skull, and I wouldn't even classify them as actual villains, since most of the members seem like genuinely good people who had no idea what they were actually doing, and were only attacking you because that's what they were told to do, and actually thought they were doing the jobs they wanted to do. Plus on top of that, I found the Aether Foundation to be far more challenging in battle than Team Skull, and their leader, Lucidine, is bar none one of the best villains of any Pokemon game to date. She is absolutely Zubash insane, and I love that. My second favorite villain of the core series. Another problem I have with Generation 7 is we have another minuscule roster of Pokemon, with only 80 new Pokemon being introduced to the series, barring Alola forms. And I will get to that. I could forgive it if it had a pretty cool roster of Pokemon like Generation 6 did, but Alola has some of my least favorite designed Pokemon to date. I really wasn't into designs of too many Alola Pokemon, although there were some cool ones. It still didn't stop me from making teams consisting mostly of Alola native Pokemon. And really, the teams I made in Alola, I will probably say are some of, if not my best teams to date. But overall, I just felt like the designs of these Pokemon were a step down from Generations 3 through 6. And as for Alola forms, I really wasn't into these designs too much. Especially when you take into account that all of them are Kanto native Pokemon. I know this is Pokemon's 20th anniversary game, but could the favoritism be more obvious? Generation 6 introduced Mega Evolution, but no Gen 6 Pokemon got Mega Evolution. Primarily Gen 1 and 3 got that. While we did get some Mega Evolved Pokemon in between, it was mostly 1 and 3. Gen 2 and 4 Pokemon could use a buff, not only just Gen 1 Pokemon. But I did like some Alola designed Pokemon. Primarily Ninetales, Marowak, and Raichu, but that's really it. Overall, Generation 7 is a phenomenal generation. It truly is a work of art. So far, Sun and Moon are amazing Pokemon games that gave us wonderful characters, one of the best characters I have ever seen from a core gaming series, one of the best and most engaging stories of a Pokemon game to date. I will certainly give you a ton of feels, some very interesting lore of the Ultra Beast, which I do hope gets explored more in later installments of Generation 7, another beautiful region to explore. We get friggin' Ash Greninja, and that is amazing. It became the ace of my team. So many new innovations to the series. There are really no words I can think of that can properly describe Generation 7 Pokemon. I stopped playing Pokemon after Generation 3, but I'm glad Generation 7 is the games I came back to when I decided to start playing these games again. Like I said in the beginning of this entry, Game Freak really outdid themselves this time and deserve a pat on the back. The future of Pokemon looks bright, and Generation 7 is leading the way, getting me all the more excited for Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and see what they'll bring to the table later on this year in November. Again, kudos to you, Game Freak. You did a very good job this time around. And oh yeah, you know it. Generation 5 is hands down my favorite generation of Pokemon to date. One that gets a lot of heat from the fan base, and mostly it's from Gen 1ers who have no idea what they're talking about, but I digress. Generation 5 was a fantastic generation, giving in my opinion the best core Pokemon games to date with Black and White, who have the best story from any generation so far, one that was engaging. The narrative brought out the best of its characters, who are more or less your own posse traveling with you, and developed them all at the same time, humanized the supposed antagonist, and actually made him very likable and quite a fascinating character. Then came Black and White 2, which are sequels to Black and White, picking up 2 years where the previous story left off, and I feel like while these games aren't quite as story-driven, the story was still nice, and as far as overall quality goes, equally as good. Giving us the most interesting villainous group of the game so far, whose goal is to actually make you question the morality of the player character and those who own Pokemon, kinda coming off like PETA, but it was all a ruse for the true leader of Team Plasma who wanted to enact his plan for world domination, kinda like what Team Rocket wanted, although it was actually more interesting and well thought out. And the leader of Team Plasma is bar none the best villains from the game so far. To be put in simplest words, Gensis, our main antagonist, is just a complete bastard who's just pure evil with no redeeming qualities whatsoever. That is the kind of villain I want in a Pokemon game. Among other things, Generation 5 gave us triple battles and rotation battles, which are an insane amount of fun, doing exactly as they say. Triple battles allowing us to use 3 Pokemon at once in a battle, while rotation battles is pretty much the same thing, although it's one-on-one, you have to rotate your Pokemon who are already in battle to outsmart your opponent. We were given hidden abilities, which made so many more Pokemon more viable for the competitive scene. And speaking of which, Generation 5 gave us the largest roster of Pokemon to date, with 156 new Pokemon, which most certainly gives you a lot of variety. One thing people complain about Generation 5's Pokemon is the fact that with so many new Pokemon, we're forced to use only Generation 5 Pokemon, which I actually do like, and we're able to make good teams with them. The other being the designs of their Pokemon, but in my opinion, Generation 5 has some of the best designed Pokemon so far that are still a metric ton better than Generation 1's Pokemon. But I will say that despite Generation 5's fantastic roster, it has what is in my opinion the worst set of starter Pokemon, or ties to Generation 2 for that regard. And lastly, the region of Unova, which is one of my absolute favorites, my third favorite to be exact, although Unova, Hoenn, and Kalos are all very close together, so they're all interchangeable for me, really. But being a region based off of good old New York, it's definitely big, very lively, but half of the region is pretty much cut off until you complete the main story. People do complain about Unova's linearity, and I can definitely see what they mean. For exploration in the main game, it's pretty clear you're being directed down a straight path, without being able to branch off to do something completely different. But really, that doesn't bother me, especially when taking into account that every region is linear in some way. But despite that, Unova had plenty of wonderful spots like Castelia City, Nimbasa City, Sky Arrow Bridge, Inn's Castle, Dragon Spiral Tower, Chargestone Cave, and so many more. overall, Generation 5 Pokemon are just absolutely fantastic. Fun games, a very good story, the best villain of any core Pokemon game to date, a truly fascinating character, actual companions who are wonderful characters and rivals who are developed very well, beautifully designed gyms, a great roster of Pokemon, wonderful region, some of the most fun post-game content for a Pokemon game to date, with the Pokemon World Tournament and other new places to explore in the post-game, including plenty of other new innovations that are just too much to name. When I began my Pokemon Marathon, I couldn't wait to dive into Generation 5, and when I did, it met my expectations and surpassed them. These were more than I could hope for in a Pokemon game, that were just truly amazing. Game Freak, kudos to you because you truly outdid yourself with this masterpiece. It may not be flawless, but it's still very good. And there you have it, you guys. That's my opinion, the Pokemon series, the core series at least as far as games go, from my least favorite down to my favorite. What's your favorite generation? What's your least favorite? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with it? Comment below and let me know. And I want to say again, I don't dislike any generation of Pokemon, except maybe Generation 1, but that's about as close you'll ever get to me saying I dislike a generation. Everything else in Generation 2 onwards, I really do enjoy. Just some more than others, and some I just found to be a little disappointing. But overall, they are all very fun games I can play over and over again. And I can't wait for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon in November. So that is it for this video, you guys. I am Yugo, or the Shapefish 31 Clearwing Synchro Dragon. So I will see you all some other time, and keep playing Pokemon. We've been going on strong for 20 years now, and we're just going to keep getting stronger. Stay gold, everyone. Bang!
虫に届く虫水で気は草残りのまま